welcome you all again to another episode of Preparation of UGC NET with me. In the previous few sessions, we have discussed the first unit of UGC NET paper 1, which is the general paper, and one episode is there of folk literature because I would be appearing for folk literature and hence would be preparing for that. So, whoever are there with me through this journey, all the very best to all of you. And so let's study together. Let's start off with today's session. So I hope that all of you have been going through the question papers, previous year question papers, as well as preparing for the theory part. So I suppose that we are doing this fourth episode together, in which I would be taking up the second part of Unit 1 for folk literature. And yeah, so let's go forward with it. So, in this particular episode, we would be doing these three topics. One is the shift from popular antiquities to folklore vision. The second is folklore genres and characteristics of folklore. And the third part would be certain folklore theories given by the scholars. So, the names are given here. Moving forward, we would start off with the person who has given the name or coined the name folklore. So before, as you all know, that it was not folklore and people used to call it popular antiquities. So if we go a little back in the past, the first a person to actually find out the fairy tales and the tales in the rural societies were Brothers Grimm, and this was in 1812. After that, in 1846, W.J. Thoms actually coined this word folklore, and it actually was termed to replace popular antiquities. So, William John Thoms began his literary career as an expert editor of old tales and prose romances. He also investigated customs and superstitions. Especially interesting are his studies of popular lore in Shakespeare, elves, fairies, Puck, Queen Mab, and others. They were published in the 40s and the decade in which he met his star hour. Special works on Thoms are extremely few, and the archival documents pertaining to him remain untapped. So Thoms basically wrote a letter in which he found this term problematic popular antiquities, and that was written by a pseudonym. Later, a year later, he actually wrote in the letter that it was him. He disclosed his identity. So after disclosed his identity, there were a lot of people who were, speaking against him. Later, after his death, there were other people who defended him, and this word found acceptance both in English-speaking world and abroad. So the German, Austrian, and Swiss scholars eventually borrowed it with its original spelling, folklore, Folklore, through the German word for folk, which is Volk, Volk. In this slide, we'll be learning about the folklore genres. So basically, all of the folklore could be divided into these three major categories: verbal folklore, material folklore, and customary lore. Now, verbal folklore is anything which has to do with speaking. Now, it can be songs, it can be proverbs, it can be, the daily prayers we recite, the folk poetry, then it can be anything which is related to articulating verbally. Now, when we go to material folklore, it basically comes across as any kind of material which is depicting these stories from the verbal folklore, because basically all of this folklore is oral. And digging out material folklore, we could find certain artifacts, certain instruments which depict certain lores, which come from, again, verbal folklore. For example, if we talk about the Naga shawls, so these shawls are very significant in terms of hierarchy as well, because for the kings, they have a very different design of the shawls. The colors are different, and for the common people, it's kind of very different. Similarly, if you see the bamboo and cane products from the northeast of India, especially from Arunachal Pradesh, you will see a lot of tribal people are engaging themselves in these artifacts, which are useful to them in their daily life, as well as nowadays it tells the story of their culture, and it's kind of representative of their identity. Now we come to the next one, which is the customary lore. Now, customary lore are anything related with a custom. So, any ritual, any custom which we observe from morning to night, on special days, on normal days, any custom, there is a backstory to it. So, it's again connected to the oral histories, to the oral texts, to the oral narratives coming from the verbal folklore, and it tells. The custom basically is representative of those stories, and somewhere brings forward the knowledge system from the past. And this is the way how we categorize folklore in different genres and subgenres. The characteristics of folklore. So here you can see that what are the characteristics of folklore and how we can understand what is folklore and what is not, and how we can distinguish folklore. First, that it is transmitted from one generation to another. It's imbued with a strong feeling of community because it is based on the daily lives of certain community. So it gives a strong feeling of connectedness in that community, and gives a sort of identity. So folklore is firmly rooted in the sense of place. In case of migration, the displaced elements still carry strong connotations of the place of origin. So we see that when a particular community move from one place to another, we see that their certain cultural nuances they carry with themselves. And we can't say that it doesn't get assimilated over there. It does get assimilated with the nearby cultures, nearby communities. But then it has this strong sense of place from where it belongs. You can actually connect the dots and understand that where a particular culture originates from, just by looking at their folklore. And this method of going back and tracking the roots of the folklore is called historical geographical method of research in folklore. Now, then it provides the sense of identity, as I already told you. Then it nurtures ideologies. So, whatever ideology you get from your parents, from your family, from your community, you sort of imbibe yourself into all of those understandings of things and ideologies. So, you can say that your personality shapes or nurtures through folklore, gives direction and states ways of life. Yes, it's a particular form of knowledge system, and it somehow gives you a direction to the life, and it shows you what to do. Even the moral perspective of it, you get to know through folklore. Brings forward oral histories. It's a means of preservation and transmission of knowledge systems, and acts as community marker. So these all are characteristics of folklore. Whenever we want to differentiate certain stories from folklore, this is how we would do that, by tracking up with these characteristics. All right, moving forward. Now here we can see the first theorists. So we would be, as I had already told you, that we would be speaking about understanding about the certain theories given by the scholars. And the first scholar, which is there in the syllabus of UGC NET, is Alan Duns. And he was an American folklorist, and he basically introduced the concept of allomotive, coined in an analogy of allomorph, to complement the concept of motifeme or morpheme, introduced by Kenneth L. Pike, to be used in the analysis of structures of folk tales in terms of motives identified in them. So the concept of allomotive and motifeme, it all derives from structuring of the folk tales and the certain motives we find in the folk tales, and identifying them, analyzing them, and their structure is the term or the concept introduced by Allen. He is widely credited with helping to shape the modern folklore scholarship, and so he also taught the undergraduate courses in American folklore and psychoanalytic approaches to folklore, and graduate seminars on history of folkloristics from an international perspective, and history and progression of folklore theory. So these scholars are very important in terms of UGC NET, in also in terms of understanding the concepts of folklore given by these theorists. Now we move on to Richard M. Dawson. He was also an American folklorist, and he coined this word called fake lore. So, what is fake lore? It basically is a term which, so here one example which comes to my mind is of Vishwakarma Puja in India. Especially in the eastern part of India, we celebrate Vishwakarma Puja, and that is according to the Gregorian calendar, which is generally not the case for any Hindu festival. So if we see that how it was initiated, we would get to know that the basic origination of Vishwakarma Puja, celebrated on September 17th every year, has a colonial past. And basically, the East India Company engaged a lot of people from India as laborers to work in their industries, their factories. And one day in this year, they decided that they would be, engaging the laborers to get the whole cleaning up to process, and a sort of celebration to get attached with the industrial equipments, and the sort of connection they build connection to their company or their industry, their factory. So to build up this connection, Vishwakarma Puja was initiated, and till today we celebrate it. Also, he coined this word called urban legend, meaning a modern story which never happened, told for true. All right, so moving on. Dan Ben Amos was an Israeli American folklorist, and he was among a few young folklorists where Roger Abrams, Alan Jones, then Robert Georges, and Kenneth Colston became affectionately labeled as the Young Turks by Richard Dawson for their amazing work they used to do. So he was influential, and he wrote a very important essay, which was known as Towards Definition of Folklore in Context. So its focus was on the context, and Ben Amos's work basically helped to usher new performance-based perspective, which is the most modernized form of folkloristics and study of folklore, which we perceive till today is the performance-based research that was given by Dan Ben Amos. All right, moving forward, Richard Bowman. He was a folklorist and anthropologist, and he has been very influential also in the field of performance studies, linguistic anthropology, and Quaker studies to semiotics and the history of anthropology and folkloristics. So a book he wrote, Let Your Words Be Few, was one of his earliest works, and it basically revolved around language ideology. And this book inspired so many other scholars to begin the exploration of how people's ideas about how language functions and shapes their linguistic practices. So, this was brought forward by Richard Bowman. Roger T. Abrahams was also an American folklorist, and his work basically focused on the expressive cultures of cultural histories of Americas, of the diaspora of African American people and their traditions. So he was one of the first researchers who engaged in nuanced, intelligent discussions on African diaspora in Americas. So he argued that his work on represented black speech, and by extension black people in a different, more favorable light. He also is known as a pioneer of performance approach to folk studies, and also contributing to understanding of folk song narrative, speech play, proverb, riddle, folk drama, festival, creolization, folklore and literature, folklore theory, and intellectual history of folklore studies. William R. Bascom was also a folklorist and anthropologist, and he also worked with African diaspora. and especially his work was limited to West Africa, especially Yoruba of Nigeria. And after World War II, Bascom and his wife Berta, generally they both worked together, and he began this research into the practices of Yoruba origin and Shango cult in Santeria, in Cuba, and in many other places. He published African folk tales in the New World after his death, and he was credited to be making important contribution to the debates around diffusion and independent invention. And this whole concept of diffusion and assimilation, he delved into this in his posthumous work, and he argued basically that folklore can serve four primary functions. So, according to him, the four primary functions of folklore are to amuse, to validate, uh, to educate, and to maintain conformity. So, he argues that folklores let people escape from their repressions and which are imposed upon them by the society through, for example, through the tall tales, they say. And the second function, he said that it validates culture and it justifies its rituals and institutions to those who perform and observe them. He also said that its folklore is a pedagogic device which reinforces morals, values, and builds wit. For example, telling scary stories and moral stories. The fourth function he elaborated as a means of applying social pressure and exercising social control. For example, the story in which the boy who cried wolf, the boy said that wolf, wolf, wolf is there, and first he was faking it, and then everybody used to come and he used to get this whole attention. But later on, he understood that once he called upon the wolf, and actually the wolf came and ate him up. And this kind of stories which applies a sort of social pressure and exercises social control on people. Moving on, Lauri Honko, he was a Finnish professor of folklore studies and comparative religion. His seminal work sets apart the old and new science of religion. He used new insights from social anthropology, phenomenology of religion, social psychology, and sociology. He interpreted the experience of guardian spirits in Ingrian society of peasants by developing this genre, analytic and role model theory. Uh, he classified the rituals in basically three categories: rites of passage, calendrical rites, and crisis rites. So, this was all about Laurie Honko. So now, as we come to the end of today's session, we have understood folk literature unit 1. We have completed it in two parts, and we have done the general paper unit 1 in two parts again. So in case you have missed out on it, please go back to the playlist and you will find everything over there. Apart from that, do not forget to go through the previous year question papers. Although all of this theory which I am discussing over here, I am doing it on the basis of the previous year question papers as well as the syllabus given for the UGC NET. But still, if you do not go through the question papers, you would not be able to identify the gaps which are there. So because of the whole big syllabus, the syllabus is very, very vast, and that is the reason why the breadth of the syllabus could not be covered in these episodes, because it would go on and it would never finish, never end. So because of that, the I have only concentrated on certain parts of it. In case you find that certain important parts are missing, do let me know in the comment section. You can also reach out to me through my mail ID given in the description box below. Also, do not forget to subscribe to my channel. That would give me a lot of support. So I'm expecting to hear from you all very soon, and I would be back again with the next episode, which would be on the general paper again, paper 1, in which we would be doing research aptitude in different parts. I think research aptitude is huge, and I would have to divide it in different parts again. if you are interested in folklore, there's a lot of content in my channel regarding folklore and culture. There's a different playlist to that. So do check out in case you are interested. I'm sure you would find it fascinating enough to follow me. So thank you so much for sticking till the end if you are still here. Um, so keep reading, keep learning, and see you soon. Bye bye.